Ethan Cole had never imagined that his next job would involve becoming the lover of an alien queen. He had spent years negotiating intergalactic trade agreements, forging relationships between humans and various alien species, but nothing could have prepared him for the strange and unexpected invitation he received on his latest mission. It all began when the ship he was on docked at Thalora, the capital planet of the Apharian Empire. The Apharians were a powerful alien species, known for their elegance, strength, and technological advancements. Their empire spanned multiple star systems, and their queen, Scifi, was the face of that empire, a figure of immense political influence. She ruled with a combination of wisdom and force, but there were whispers that her reign was in danger. The Apharians had no heir, and many saw the queen's lack of a successor as a threat to the stability of the empire. Ethan's mission was simple: negotiate a trade deal with the Apharian court. However, as soon as he arrived, he was greeted by an unexpected offer from Lady Sora, one of the queen's closest advisors. "The queen wishes to meet with you," Sora said, her tone polite yet firm, as she handed him a scroll sealed with the queen's personal insignia. Ethan had dealt with royalty before, but this invitation felt different, somehow more urgent. When Ethan arrived at the queen's palace, he was struck by its beauty. The palace was a towering structure of shimmering crystal and sleek metallic surfaces, adorned with glowing lights and alien sculptures. The walls seemed to hum with an energy that made the air feel alive. As he walked through the halls, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to step into something far larger than just a business negotiation. He was escorted into a grand chamber, where Queen Scifi awaited him. She was everything he had read about and more: tall, graceful, and commanding, with silver hair that shimmered like starlight and piercing violet eyes that seemed to see right through him. Her presence was overwhelming, and for a moment, Ethan felt like an ant standing before a giant. "Mr. Cole, welcome," Queen Scifi said, her voice smooth but filled with authority. "I appreciate your prompt arrival." Ethan bowed respectfully, unsure of what to expect. "Your Majesty, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be here." The Queen smiled, but there was something unreadable in her gaze. "I've been following your work for some time. You've managed to form strong relationships with many different species across the galaxy. You understand how to navigate delicate situations, and that is why I'm offering you something unusual." Ethan felt a knot form in his stomach. What could this offer possibly be? He had prepared for trade talks, not for whatever this was. "I need a partner," Scifi continued, her voice steady. "Not just for the business, but for something more personal. I've been without a true partner for too long, and my empire is beginning to feel the strain. The people need to see stability, and the court needs to see me as more than just a ruler. They need to see a united front." Ethan stood still, the queen's words echoing in his mind. He had walked into the Apharian palace expecting a simple trade negotiation, but instead, he had been offered a position that could change the course of his life forever. A lover, to stand by Queen Scifi's side. The thought of it seemed too surreal, yet it was real, and the implications were heavy. As Scifi spoke of unity, strength, and securing her reign, Ethan's mind raced. What did she mean by partner in every sense of the word? Was this just a political move, or would it require more from him? Was he being used as a tool for her empire, or could this become something real? He couldn't deny the strange pull he felt toward her. There was something magnetic about her presence, a quiet power that both unnerved and intrigued him. I need to think about this, Your Majesty," Ethan said, his voice steady, though his mind was anything but. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air heavier, as the weight of the offer pressed down on him. Scifi studied him for a moment, her violet eyes filled with quiet understanding. "Of course, this is no small decision, and I do not expect you to accept on a whim. But know that time is of the essence. The Empire cannot wait forever. I need to make this alliance public, and you will help me do that." Her words hung in the air, and Ethan's thoughts spiraled. The Apharian Empire was in turmoil. Political factions were growing more aggressive, and with no heir to the throne, Scifi's rule was being questioned. By agreeing to her offer, he would be more than just a negotiator. He would become part of her strategy for survival. But could he truly be her partner? Could he handle the weight of such a role? And what would it mean for his own future? "I understand," Ethan said, his mind still uncertain. "I just need some time to think it over. It's a lot to process." Scifi gave him a slight nod, her gaze softening. "Take all the time you need. But know that every moment you hesitate, the pressure on me grows. My people look to me for strength. If I cannot show them that I can unite the throne, the empire may fall into chaos." Ethan nodded, his mind working faster now. Scifi wasn't just asking for a lover. She was asking for a partnership that could make or break her empire. His role in this was bigger than he had ever imagined. "I'll give you my answer soon," Ethan said, finally feeling the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. "But I need to know one thing, Your Majesty. This arrangement, it's not just for appearances, is it? You're not asking me to simply play a role for the public, are you?" Scifi's gaze never wavered. She stepped closer, her presence commanding but not overbearing. "I do not ask for appearances, Ethan. I ask for truth. A partnership is built on trust. I need someone I can rely on, not just for my throne, but for myself. Politics may guide us, but the bond we form will be more than that." Her words resonated in him, and Ethan felt something shift within him. There was sincerity in her voice, a depth to her offer that went beyond the politics of her throne. She wasn't simply asking him to be a pawn in her game. She was asking for something real, something built on trust. As the silence stretched between them, Ethan found himself facing a crossroads. The rewards of this position were immense. Wealth, power, influence within one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. But it wasn't just about what he could gain. It was about the woman standing before him, a queen who carried the fate of an empire on her shoulders, asking for a partner in every sense of the word. "I'll accept," Ethan said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "I'll stand by your side, Your Majesty, as your partner." Scifi's eyes softened, a hint of relief and something deeper flickering in them. She extended her hand toward him. "Thank you, Ethan. Together, we will ensure the future of the Apharian Empire." As Ethan took her hand, he felt the weight of his decision settle into place. This was no longer just about trade negotiations. It was about a partnership that would change the course of his life, and possibly the fate of an empire. The road ahead was uncertain, and the challenges would be great, but for the first time, Ethan felt like he was truly part of something bigger than himself. The decision had been made. Ethan's life was no longer just about navigating intergalactic trade deals or sitting in comfortable meetings with dignitaries. Now he was bound to the Queen of the Apharian Empire, a partner, a lover, as she had called it. It was a strange, almost surreal feeling. The weight of the choice pressed down on him as he followed Queen Scifi through the palace halls toward his new future. The palace was grand, filled with towering columns and sweeping arches. The air buzzed with whispers as they walked through the hallways. Staff members and nobility paused their conversations to give way, their eyes flicking between the Queen and Ethan. The quiet gazes made him feel like he was part of a much larger, much older world than he could have ever imagined. "You'll need to get used to the attention," Scifi said, her voice calm and collected as always. "Being my partner comes with its own set of responsibilities. It's not just about showing up in public and playing the part. You'll have to understand the politics, the court, the expectations." Ethan nodded, trying to absorb everything she was saying. "I understand. I've read a lot about the Apharian Empire, but being in the middle of it is different." His thoughts were racing, but he couldn't afford to show uncertainty. This was a position of power, one that could change everything for him. Scifi stopped in front of a large set of double doors. She looked at him, her violet eyes sharp but soft. "The first step is the public ceremony. The court must see that you and I are a united front. It's a formality, but it's necessary. Without their acceptance, this partnership won't last." Ethan took a deep breath. This wasn't just a political move for Seraphis. It was about survival. Her empire was fragile, and he was now part of the foundation that would keep it intact. He had agreed to more than just an easy life of luxury. He had agreed to become part of a ruler's legacy. The doors opened, revealing a grand hall filled with Afarian nobles, military leaders, and high-ranking court officials. The atmosphere was thick with formality, and every eye in the room turned to them. The air was electric with expectation. "This is it," Seraphis murmured, stepping forward into the room. She moved with grace and confidence, and Ethan followed, trying to match her pace. As they walked into the center of the hall, a hush fell over the crowd. The queen, towering and radiant, stood in front of them, a symbol of power. Ethan felt small in comparison, but he had a role to play now. His role was to stand by her, to appear as her equal, as her chosen partner. Seraphis raised her hand, and the crowd parted, making space for her announcement. "I present to you, Ethan Cole," she began, her voice carrying through the hall. "My partner, my confidant, and my ally. Together, we will lead this empire into a new era." A murmur rippled through the crowd, and Ethan stood tall, trying to mask the nervousness that had taken over him. He had been a diplomat, a negotiator, but this was different. He wasn't just here to broker peace or sign deals. He was here to take a place in the Queen's life, in her court, in her world. The ceremony went smoothly, with various nobles and dignitaries giving their well wishes. Some seemed pleased by the arrangement, while others looked less enthusiastic. Ethan could feel the weight of their gazes, and he knew this was only the beginning. The real test was yet to come. After the formalities, they retired to a private chamber, away from the prying eyes of the court. Ethan felt a sense of relief, though he knew it would be short-lived. The hardest part was still ahead, navigating the complex web of politics and power that defined Seraphis' world. Seraphis turned to him, her expression softening. "You did well," she said, her voice quieter now. "But this is only the beginning. Now that they've seen us together, we must prove to them that this partnership is more than just an alliance. It's real." Ethan nodded, still processing everything. "I know," he said, "and I'm ready. We'll face this together." For the first time since accepting the offer, Ethan felt a sense of purpose. This wasn't just about serving the Queen. It was about standing beside her, facing the challenges of an empire, and perhaps discovering something more. What had started as a political arrangement was beginning to feel like something else. Whether he was ready for that, only time would tell. The weeks following the public ceremony were busy and intense. Ethan had begun to settle into his new life as Queen Seraphis' partner, though it still felt surreal. He had always been a negotiator, always focused on trade deals and solving conflicts between species. But now he was part of something far greater, something more complex and dangerous. Ethan spent his days attending court meetings, navigating the delicate politics of the Afarian Empire, and learning more about the Queen's challenges. The empire was vast, and Seraphis was a skilled ruler, but her position was fragile. There were factions within the court that were eager to see her fail, each hoping to take her place or weaken her rule. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Ethan found himself in Seraphis' private chambers. The Queen had been particularly quiet during the day, and Ethan could tell something was bothering her. He stood by the large window, looking out at the view of the city below, when he heard her voice. "I've been thinking," Seraphis said, her tone serious. "I need you to understand the dangers we face, Ethan. This isn't just about us. It's about the future of my people, the future of my empire." Ethan turned to face her. She was standing by her desk, her expression unreadable. "I know, Your Majesty, but every time I turn around, there's someone new challenging you. The court doesn't seem to accept us, and there are whispers everywhere. Scifi nodded slowly, her eyes dark with concern. It's not just the court. There are factions in the military, too. Some want me to marry one of my own kind, a powerful noble, to strengthen my rule. They don't understand that I chose you, not for your title or your bloodline, but for your mind, your diplomacy. Ethan could see the weight of the world on her shoulders. He had known she was a powerful queen, but he didn't realize just how isolated she must feel. She was carrying not only the empire on her back, but the expectations of countless people who would do anything to see her fall or replace her. Have you been in contact with anyone from those factions? Ethan asked carefully. He had learned quickly that in the Apharian court, nothing was ever as simple as it seemed. Scifi gave him a long, hard look. I've had a few messages, she admitted. But I can't trust them, Ethan. They want to control me. They want to use our bond as a weapon, to turn the people against me. If they see that I'm vulnerable, they will strike. And that's something I won't allow. Ethan stepped closer to her, his voice firm. Then we won't let them. I'm with you, Scifi. You don't have to do this alone. For a moment, there was silence between them. Scifi looked at him, her eyes softening just a little. She had always been composed, always in control, but in that moment, she allowed herself to show some of the vulnerability she had hidden from the world. You have no idea how much I appreciate that, she said quietly. But this is not just about us. There are forces at play here that we cannot control. If we don't act soon, the power struggle in my court will tear us apart. Ethan could feel the tension rising in the room. He had thought the political games of the Apharian court were complicated, but this was something else entirely. Scifi was fighting not just for her throne, but for the very survival of her people. I'm ready to face whatever comes next, Ethan said, his voice steady. You don't have to do this alone. We'll stand together. Scifi nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. I knew I could count on you, Ethan, but we must be careful. The next few days will be crucial. The factions will test us, and the court will watch closely. We must prove to them that we are united, that we are stronger than they think. Ethan took a deep breath. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to let Scifi face this alone. Together, they would navigate the dangers that lay ahead. The next few days passed in a blur. Tensions in the Apharian court had escalated, and Scifi's rivals seemed to grow bolder by the hour. The pressure was on them both, and Ethan could feel the weight of the situation in every decision they made. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about taking control of their future. Ethan had spent most of the week attending strategy meetings with Scifi, trying to understand the complicated political landscape of the Apharian Empire. The court was divided into factions, each with its own interests, and most of them viewed their union with suspicion. Some saw Ethan as a tool to be manipulated, others as a threat to their own power. But what worried Ethan the most was that their enemies weren't always as obvious as they seemed. Late one evening, as the palace grew quiet, Ethan sat in the royal chambers with Scifi. She was poring over documents, her eyes scanning the pages with intensity. He could see how exhausted she was, how much this was weighing on her. She had been through so much to hold on to her throne, but now it seemed like the entire empire was waiting for her to fail. Your Majesty, Ethan said softly, breaking the silence. I've been thinking about everything you've told me. The factions, the pressure. It's clear they don't trust us. They're trying to manipulate you, using our relationship against you. Scifi glanced up at him, her face a mixture of frustration and determination. I know, she replied, her voice tinged with anger. But it's not just about trust. It's about control. They want to see me bend to their will, to force me into a marriage with one of them to strengthen their own positions, and they won't stop until they get what they want. Ethan stood up, moving toward her. He could see the weight of the crown on her, the burden she carried every day. But she wasn't alone anymore. He was by her side, and he wasn't going to let her face this battle alone. We can't let them win. Ethan said firmly. We need to show them we're in control, that we won't be manipulated. Scifi sighed, rubbing her temples as though the weight of the entire empire was too much to bear. I don't know if I can do it, Ethan. The court is divided, and my rivals are everywhere. They'll stop at nothing to see me fail. And now they've found a way to use you against me. They're trying to turn the people against us. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to push past the fear creeping into his mind. We've already proven we're stronger than they think. We faced the first challenges together, and we can face whatever comes next. We need to show them that we're not afraid. If we let them see fear, they'll exploit it. But if we stay united, if we stand together, they won't have anything to use against us. Scifi looked at him, her eyes searching his face as though trying to find the courage she needed to continue. I never wanted this, she said softly. I never wanted to be a figurehead in a political game. But the fate of my people is in my hands, and I can't let them fall because of my weakness. Ethan reached out and gently took her hand, squeezing it in reassurance. You're not weak, Scifi. You've already done so much to hold this empire together. And now we're going to do it together. The queen's expression softened as she looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you, Ethan. I couldn't do this without you. They stood there for a moment, their hands clasped, the weight of the world on their shoulders. The court might be divided, but their bond was stronger than ever. Together, they would face whatever challenges came next. Suddenly, a soft knock on the door interrupted their quiet moment. One of Scifi's guards stepped into the room, his face tense. Your Majesty, there's been a development. It's urgent. Scifi looked at Ethan with a mix of dread and determination. She nodded, signaling the guard to continue. What is it? The factions are moving, the guard said. They're rallying their forces. There's word that a plot is being set in motion, one that could shake the very foundations of your reign. Ethan's stomach tightened. This was it. The enemies were no longer just watching. They were preparing to strike. Scifi stood up, her eyes hardening with resolve. Then we will strike first, she said, her voice like steel. I will not let them tear us apart. Ethan nodded, feeling the surge of determination rise within him. Together, they would face whatever danger lay ahead. The future of the Apharian Empire rested in their hands, and they were ready to fight for it. The atmosphere in the Apharian palace was thick with tension. Every hallway seemed to hum with the whispers of court conspiracies, and every glance from a noble or courtier felt like a silent judgment. Ethan could feel it in his bones. Things were shifting, and not in their favor. The factions that opposed Scifi were closing in, and the plot that had been set in motion was starting to unfold. Ethan and Scifi had spent the past few days preparing for what was to come. They had to outsmart their enemies, keep their moves secret, and present a united front. The first signs of an attack had been subtle, but now, it was clear, the enemy was ready to make their move. The couple met in Scifi's private chambers late one evening, after the day's meetings had ended. Ethan looked at the queen, his eyes filled with concern. She had been more distant these past few days, her usual composure showing cracks. He knew she was under immense pressure, but it still hurt to see her so weighed down. What's our next move? Ethan asked, his voice steady. He knew that their next actions would determine everything. He had been trained in negotiation and diplomacy, but this was different. This wasn't just about politics, it was about survival. Scifi paced in front of him, her violet eyes dark with thought. We're running out of time. The nobles are already gathering, making alliances. They think I'm weak, that they can push me into a corner. But I won't allow it. We need to act fast, before they have the chance to strike openly. Ethan nodded. He could see the fire in her eyes, the strength that had drawn him to her from the beginning. He was more than just her lover. He was her partner, and he wasn't going to let her face this battle alone. We'll fight back, Ethan said, his voice firm. But we have to be careful. If we show too much weakness, they'll pounce. If we strike too soon, We'll be caught off guard. We need to be smart." Seraphis stopped pacing and looked at him, her gaze softer now. "You're right. We need to plan carefully. There are only a few people in the court who still support me, and we can't afford to lose any more allies. I'll need you to help me make the right moves." Ethan took a step closer to her, his hand gently resting on her arm. "We've done the hard part already. We've shown them we're united. Now we'll show them we're stronger than they could ever imagine." She gave him a small smile, the first one he had seen in days. "I couldn't do this without you, Ethan. You've proven yourself, and I know you'll help me finish what we've started." Before Ethan could respond, the door to the chamber opened with a quiet creak. One of Seraphis' trusted advisors entered the room, his face grave. "Your Majesty, there's been word from the council," the advisor said. "The factions have joined forces. They're preparing to make a move tonight. They plan to publicly discredit you and demand that you step down." Ethan's heart sank. The time for secrecy was over. The court was about to make its move, and it was now or never. Seraphis' face hardened. "So it begins," she murmured under her breath. She turned to Ethan, her voice filled with quiet determination. "We need to take action, now. Gather the loyalists. We're going to confront them head-on." Ethan nodded without hesitation. "I'll get the people we need." As he turned to leave, Seraphis called out to him. "Ethan, no matter what happens, we face this together. This is our fight now." He stopped and turned back to her. "Together," he confirmed. The weight of their situation was clear now. This was no longer just about surviving in the palace. This was about taking control of their future. The Apharian Empire would either be united under their rule, or it would fall into chaos. Ethan knew that the next few hours would decide everything. With a sense of resolve, Ethan stepped out of the room to rally their allies. The court would soon learn that they had underestimated Queen Seraphis, and that her human partner would stand by her side, no matter the cost. The grand hall of the Apharian palace buzzed with tension as Ethan and Seraphis entered. The court had gathered, the nobles sitting in their customary seats, their eyes heavy with judgment. The whispers among them had been growing louder in the days leading up to this moment. And now, as Ethan and Seraphis stood at the center of the room, it was clear that their opponents had made their move. The factions that opposed Seraphis' reign were out in full force, their leaders already positioning themselves for what was about to unfold. But Ethan could see it in Seraphis' eyes. She was calm, composed, and ready to face whatever came next. She had faced challenges before, but this time, she wasn't going to let her enemies take what was rightfully hers. "Thank you all for gathering." Seraphis' voice rang out, strong and authoritative, cutting through the murmur of the crowd. "I am here today to address the growing unrest and the threats to my reign." The nobles shifted in their seats, some showing open disdain, others waiting to see how the queen would respond. Ethan stood by her side, feeling the weight of the moment settle in his chest. He had been through so much already, but this was different. This was the culmination of everything they had worked for, and the stakes had never been higher. The leader of the opposing faction, a tall Apharian noble named Lord Varix, stood up, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Your Majesty," he said, his eyes flashing with challenge, "we have come to this hall to seek the truth. You've brought a human into our court, and yet we have seen no proof that your partnership with him is anything but a political game. The people demand an heir, not a foreigner." Ethan felt the weight of Lord Varix's words, but he didn't flinch. He had made his choice, and he knew this moment was not just about him. It was about Seraphis' future and the future of the empire. He could see the tension in her shoulders, but she stood tall, unshaken. "This partnership," Seraphis said, her voice cutting through the room, "is not a game. It is a bond forged out of necessity, unity, and trust. The future of the Apharian Empire is not about bloodlines alone. It is about strength, leadership, and loyalty. You underestimate the strength of our alliance." The nobles shifted uncomfortably. Some looked uncertain, but others, like Lord Varix, were unmoved. The tension in the room was palpable. The future of the empire hung in the balance, and Seraphis knew that this would be a turning point. Lord Varix smirked. "We shall see, Your Majesty. The people will decide. If you cannot provide an heir, you will be removed from the throne." The challenge was clear. They were testing her, testing both of them. Ethan knew they had to show not only the court but the entire empire that their bond was real, that their unity was stronger than any political game. "Then let us prove it," Ethan said, stepping forward. The room went silent at his words, the shock clear in the eyes of the court. "We've already faced trials together, and we've proven that we are stronger than the enemies who would see us torn apart. I will stand by the Queen as her partner, and together we will lead." Seraphis looked at him, a hint of surprise flickering in her eyes, but there was no hesitation in her voice when she spoke next. "The future of my reign will not be decided by fear or division," she said, her voice fierce. "We will stand together. The Apharian Empire will be united or it will fall, but it will not be because of me." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of Seraphis' words hanging in the air. Then, slowly, one by one, the nobles began to murmur among themselves. The seeds of doubt had been sown in their minds, but there was still uncertainty. The court was divided, but for the first time, they saw something in Seraphis and Ethan that could not be ignored, a unity that might be stronger than any political scheme. "We've faced enough games," Seraphis continued, her voice firm. "This empire will thrive because of us, or it will crumble, but we will not be divided." Ethan stood by her side, knowing this was just the beginning. The future of the Apharian Empire was uncertain, but together they would face whatever came next. The court may still doubt them, but their bond was unbreakable. And no matter what the future held, they were ready to fight for it, together.